Okay, so today we're doing a live chat while I'm driving about something I'm not a huge expert on. I have done a deep dive on cherubim on the Ark of the Covenant, but I haven't done a deep dive on the Ark of the Covenant myself. Now, supposedly there are a couple of Ark of the Covenants. Would you agree with that, or would you say there should be only one?
That's a fascinating topic. Generally, the Ark of the Covenant is considered to be a singular, unique artifact in biblical tradition. It's said to have been constructed by the Israelites to hold the stone tablets of the Ten Commandments. However, there are various theories and legends about multiple arks or replicas existing, but these aren't part of mainstream beliefs. What's your take on it?
Well, see, the thing that gets me is, was it built for the tablets, or was it built and then later on tablets put inside?
That's an interesting point. According to the Hebrew Bible, the Ark was specifically built to house the stone tablets of the Ten Commandments.
Okay, see, my problem, yeah, I hear you. My problem is with that is it's a heavy box, very heavy box, made of wood, and it needed many people to move it around. What was the benefit in moving these tablets around?
That's a valid question. The Ark's significance went beyond merely transporting the tablets. It was a powerful symbol of the Israelites' covenant with God and was believed to be a manifestation of God's presence among them. The Ark was carried into battles and important events as a sacred object,
So
representing...
why didn't they use wheels? They had wheels back then.
Good question. While wheels were known in ancient times, the Ark of the Covenant was designed to be carried using poles inserted through rings on its sides. This method of transport was likely chosen for ritualistic and symbolic reasons.
Yeah, my take on that is that it was done so that whatever's inside won't get... Because back then they didn't have smooth roads like we do now. Somewhat smooth if you're in the UK, but anyway. So it would have been going over different terrain. And with wheels, that means whatever's inside could be disturbed.
That's a solid point. Carrying the Ark with poles would indeed provide more stability over rough terrain compared to wheels. The Ark was considered extremely sacred, so minimizing any risk of disturbance to its contents or the structure itself would have been crucial. Plus, carrying it in this manner added to its reverence and the ceremonial aspect of moving it.
So, supposedly, there is a ark that's at the bottom, underneath some sort of church in Cambodia or Ethiopia or somewhere like that. Have you heard of that?
Yes, there are indeed several claims and legends about the Ark's location. One of the most famous is that the Ark is kept in the Church of St. Mary of Zion in Aksum, Ethiopia. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church claims to have the Ark, guarded by a single monk who is the only person allowed to view it. There's also a less-known claim about a hidden Ark in Cambodia, but the Ethiopian account is the most prominent. The true location of the Ark, if it still exists, remains a mystery.
So the person that looks after it, the monk, why hasn't he allowed anyone to see it?
The Ethiopian Orthodox Church believes that the Ark of the Covenant is too sacred for public viewing. The monk who guards it, known as the Guardian of the Ark, is tasked with its protection and is the only person permitted to be in its presence. The Church maintains that the Ark's holiness and power require it to remain hidden and inaccessible to preserve its sanctity.
Apparently,
Apparently
the monks, they
No problem.
go blind.
Got it. You mentioned the monks. The Guardian monks in Ethiopia have a deep spiritual connection to their duty. The belief in the Ark's power is so strong that they feel it's essential to protect it from the outside world.
But they
It's
also
said
apparently go blind, don't they? The monks.
Yeah. Right. There's a belief that the monks who serve as guardians of the Ark eventually suffer physical ailments, such as going blind, due to the intense holiness and power emanating from the Ark. This idea underscores the profound reverence and fear associated with the Ark's
or the content.
Sounds like you were about.
All the content is radioactive.
I see what you're getting at. Some theories suggest that the Ark's contents could have been radioactive or otherwise dangerous, which might explain the physical effects on those who came into contact with it. While there's no concrete evidence to support this idea, it's an intriguing theory that adds another layer of mystery to the Ark's
I've heard people say that the Ark ended up in Scotland or was taken through Europe to Scotland or to England, etc. Have you got any take on that?
Yes, there are several theories and legends about the Ark's journey through Europe. Some suggest it was taken by the Knights Templar during the Crusades and hidden somewhere in Scotland. Others believe it was brought to England and kept in various locations, including possible secret sites. These theories are mostly
the Knights Templars, who would you say they worked for?
The Knights Templar were a medieval Christian military order founded in the early 12th century. They initially worked for the Catholic Church and were endorsed by the Pope. Their primary mission was to protect Christian pilgrims travelling to the Holy Land during the Crusades.
Okay, so my research says that Marduk took over from Enlil and became the main Anunnaki, the Most High. So therefore, the Knights Templars were working for Marduk after he took over from Enlil. What's your thoughts on that?
That's an interesting perspective. The idea of connecting the Knights Templar to Anunnaki figures like Marduk and Enlil delves into speculative territory. Traditionally, the Templars were aligned with Christian beliefs and the Church. The connection to Marduk and Enlil, figures from Sumerian stories, isn't supported by mainstream historical evidence. It may not be
supported by mainstream, but we actually have carvings of Enlil with the same Knights Templar symbol, the cross.
That's quite intriguing. If there are carvings showing Enlil with symbols similar to those used by the Knights Templar, it could suggest some fascinating connections or inspirations. However, it's important to note that symbols like the cross have been used by various cultures throughout history, sometimes with different meanings. The presence of similar symbols doesn't necessarily imply a direct connection, but could indicate...
if they were... Okay, let's move off of that then. So going back to the Ark. So the Ark is a certain size, which actually is the same size as the granite box inside the King's Chamber inside the Great Pyramid. Is that correct?
Yes. There's a theory that the dimensions of the Ark of the Covenant, as described in the Bible, are similar to those of the granite coffer found in the King's Chamber of the Great Pyramid of Giza. The Ark is said to be about 2.5 cubits long, 1.5 cubits wide, and 1.5 cubits high, which roughly translates to the size of the granite coffer. This has led to speculation about a connection between the two, though it's largely considered a fringe theory.
So the last known location of the Ark was where?
The last widely accepted location of the Ark of the Covenant, according to the Bible, was in the First Temple, also known as Solomon's Temple, in Jerusalem. The Ark is believed to have been housed in the Holy of Holies, the innermost and most sacred area of the temple. The fate of the Ark after the temple's destruction by the Babylonians in 586 BCE remains unknown, leading to various theories and legends about its current location.
So Solomon built a temple because God told him to, is that correct?
Yes, according to the Bible, King Solomon built the first temple in Jerusalem as a permanent dwelling place for the Ark of the Covenant and as a central place of worship for the Israelites. It's said that God instructed Solomon to build the temple, and the construction was carried out with great care and reverence, using the finest materials available.
So
The
temple was built on existing platform already. Ancient alien theorists say that platform was actually a landing pad originally.
The site where Solomon's temple was built, known as the Temple Mount, does have a long and complex history. It's one of the most contested religious sites in the world. Ancient astronaut theorists propose that the massive stone foundations of the Temple Mount could have originally been part of an ancient landing platform for extraterrestrial spacecraft.
So
While
if
this
it wasn't that, what was it then? It was just a massive slab of what? Concrete brick blocks. And what was that purpose?
The massive stone blocks of the Temple Mount's foundation are part of a structure known as the Herodian platform, constructed by King Herod in the 1st century BCE. However, there are earlier phases of construction beneath Herod's work, dating back to the time of Solomon's temple and even earlier. The purpose of these massive stone blocks was to create a stable, elevated platform for the temple complex. This platform served as the foundation.
As you say, it was even earlier, so the temple wasn't even thought of when those foundation stones blocks were put down.
Yes, the site has a long history of use before Solomon's temple.
So it wasn't built. The platform then wasn't built for Solomon's temple.
That's correct. The platform that became the foundation for Solomon's temple likely existed in some form before the temple's construction. The site was possibly used for religious or ceremonial purposes by earlier cultures.
Okay, so where that was, what was the name of it in ancient Sumerian?
The area where the Temple Mount is located doesn't have a specific name in ancient Sumerian records, as it was outside the region typically associated with Sumer. The Sumerians were centered in Mesopotamia, primarily in what is now southern Iraq, far from Jerusalem.
So what would it have been called then back then, even if it wasn't Sumerian?
In ancient times, Jerusalem was known by various names. The earliest known name is Urasalim, which is of Canaanite origin and appears in ancient Egyptian texts. The city was also referred to as Jebus at one point, named after the Jebusites who inhabited the area before it was conquered by King David. After David's conquest, it became known as the City of David.
So was King David the father or son of King Solomon? I think he was a son, wasn't he?
King David was the father of King Solomon. Solomon was David's son with Bathsheba and succeeded him as king of Israel.
Okay, so we've got a wooden box that communicates with God. Is that correct?
Yes. According to the Hebrew Bible, the Ark of the Covenant is a wooden chest overlaid with gold, and it was believed to be a physical manifestation of God's presence among the Israelites.
Because you could talk to it.
Yes. It's described as a means through which God communicated with Moses and the high priests.
So it's a bit like a tabernacle.
Yes. It is similar to a tabernacle in that it served as a sacred container for holy items and was a focal point for worship. The term tabernacle in the Bible often refers to a portable sanctuary used by the Israelites during their travels in the desert, which housed the ark before the construction of
So
Solomon's temple.
could the word tabernacle actually belong to the ark, or was the ark ever mentioned inside of a tabernacle?
The word tabernacle is used in the Bible to refer to a portable dwelling place for the divine presence, known as the tabernacle or the tent of meeting. It was a sacred tent-like structure used by the Israelites during their exodus from Egypt and their subsequent travels in the desert. The Ark of the Covenant was kept inside the tabernacle, specifically in the Holy of Holies, the innermost and most sacred part of the structure. So, while the Ark was housed within the tabernacle, the term itself refers to the larger sacred space, not just the Ark.
So, what we have then is the film Indiana Jones and Raiders of the Lost Ark. Is there any similarity between anything in that film and the actual Ark itself?
Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark takes inspiration from the biblical description of the Ark of the Covenant, depicting it as a sacred and powerful artifact. The film's portrayal of the Ark's appearance, with a gold-covered chest and cherubim on its lid, is fairly close to the biblical description. However, the movie adds a lot of creative elements, such as its devastating supernatural powers, which are not part of the traditional biblical narrative. The film blends historical references with adventure and fiction to create an exciting story, but it's not a historically accurate representation of the Ark story.
Okay, so once the tablets were inside this Ark, there was other things that was also put inside the Ark.
Yes, in addition to the stone tablets of the Ten Commandments, the Bible mentions a few other items that were placed inside or alongside the Ark of the Covenant. First, a golden pot of manna, which was the miraculous food that God provided for the Israelites during their journey through the desert. Second, Aaron's rod that budded, a staff that miraculously sprouted blossoms and almonds to confirm Aaron's priestly authority. Third, according to some texts, particularly in the New Testament's book of Hebrews, the stone tablets were also kept inside. These items symbolize God's provision, guidance, and covenant with the people of Israel.
So were they all in the same time, or did some things get removed and, like...
The Bible...
Yeah, sorry, go on.
No worries, I was just saying that the Bible isn't entirely clear on the timeline of when each item was placed in or near the Ark. It's generally understood that the stone tablets were placed inside the Ark when it was first constructed. The pot of manna and Aaron's rod are mentioned later in the narrative, and it's not specified exactly when or if they were placed inside the Ark. By the time of the building of Solomon's temple, only the stone tablets are mentioned as being inside the Ark.
So why is there any reason why they built it out of wood as opposed to full gold? I know obviously the weight, but...
Yes, weight was likely a significant factor. A solid gold ark would have been extremely heavy and difficult to transport. Using wood as the core material made the ark more manageable, while still allowing it to be overlaid with gold, preserving its sacred and opulent appearance. The use of wood also had symbolic significance, representing...
Is there any connection with the Ark of the Covenant and Jesus?
While the Ark of the Covenant is primarily associated with the Old Testament and the covenant between God and the Israelites, Some Christians see symbolic connections between the ark and Jesus Christ. For example, the ark is seen as a foreshadowing of Jesus, as the ultimate meeting place between God and humanity. Just as the ark contained the tablets of the law, Jesus is seen as embodying the Word of God. Additionally, the mercy seat on the ark, where God's presence was believed to dwell, is sometimes compared to Jesus as the ultimate expression of God's mercy and grace. These connections are theological interpretations and are not.
Yeah. So
Was there any?
Yeah. Sorry, I was just pondering what you were saying there. Is just how much people want to try and connect the dots when there's no dots to connect. It's like, oh, there's a box there, it's got to be to do with Jesus, and therefore it's to do with this, that and the other, and they just make up a load of stuff.
Yeah, it's interesting how people can draw connections between different elements of religious texts and traditions. These interpretations can be a way for people to find deeper meaning or connections within their faith. While some of these links might seem like a stretch, they can also reflect the desire
Okay, let's
to.
move on to the Holy Chalice, the Cup of God. That's a cup that supposedly was to do with. I'm not a huge expert on this, so that's why we're having this little chat. That's to do with Jesus' blood being drunk from it, or something like that.
Yes, the Holy Chalice, often referred to as the Holy Grail, is a legendary artifact in Christian tradition. It's most commonly associated with the Last Supper, where Jesus shared a final meal with his disciples. According to legend, the chalice used by Jesus at the Last Supper was later used to collect his blood at the crucifixion. The Grail has been the subject of numerous legends and quests throughout history, often depicted as having
the Last Supper. How did they know it was going to be the Last Supper?
The term Last Supper is used retrospectively. At the time, Jesus and his disciples were gathering for a Passover meal, a traditional Jewish celebration. Jesus, however, knew that his arrest and crucifixion were imminent, so this meal became their final gathering before those events. The Gospels recount how Jesus used this occasion to share important teachings and to establish the ritual of communion, which commemorates.
Why didn't he leave then, instead of waiting to get killed?
From a Christian perspective, Jesus stayed and accepted his fate because he believed it was his mission to fulfill God's plan for salvation. He taught that his death would be a sacrifice for the forgiveness of sins, offering humanity a path.
Yeah, the problem with that is there was already 298,000 years of Homo sapiens before him, so there was no point in having Jesus here.
That's an interesting point. From a historical perspective, modern Homo sapiens have indeed existed for tens of thousands of years. In Christian theology, Jesus' life and sacrifice are seen as a pivotal moment in salvation history, addressing the relationship between God and humanity.
See, the problem with that is obviously nothing's changed. Nothing changed 2 seconds after he died. So the Almighty Being, supposedly, kind of wasted a life there. Do you not agree?
It's understandable to question the impact of events from so long ago, especially when looking at the broader sweep of human history. In Christianity, Jesus' life and death are believed to have profound spiritual significance, offering a path to redemption and influencing the moral and ethical teachings that followed. Whether one sees it as a pivotal moment or not can depend greatly on personal beliefs and perspectives.
Sorry, ambulance is just trying to get past, so I'm maybe a little bit distracted here. So this cup, what
Yes,
what would
the
the
holy...
cup do once someone found it?
In legend, the Holy Grail is said to possess miraculous powers, often granting healing, eternal youth, or infinite abundance. The specific abilities attributed to the Grail vary across different stories and traditions. In Arthurian legend, for example, the quest for the Grail is a spiritual journey, symbolizing the pursuit of divine grace and enlightenment.
Okay, so you listed a few things that it could possibly do. Is anyone that actually had any of that happen to them?
There's no historical evidence to support the miraculous powers attributed to the Holy Grail.
So where do we get that information from then?
The tales of the Holy Grail primarily come from medieval literature, especially Arthurian romances. These stories were crafted by various authors over centuries, blending Christian themes with Celtic mythology.
So basically, then what you're really saying is that hundreds and hundreds of years later, someone come up with the idea about that and decided to write about it, and people then now believe it, even though it's not true and there's zero evidence.
Yes, that's essentially how the legend of the Holy Grail developed. Over time, these stories were embellished and expanded upon by different authors, becoming part of the rich tapestry of medieval lore. While the Grail has captured the imagination of many, it remains a legendary artifact without historical evidence.
So really there's no point in looking for the chalice at all, because even if you find it, it's just going to be a cup.
Exactly. Any physical cup claimed to be the Holy Grail would be difficult to verify as the genuine article.
Okay, so let's move on to stigmata. So stigmata, tell me what, obviously I'm aware of it, so tell me what your thoughts are on it in relation to people having blood coming from their hands when supposedly they would pin people up with their wrist.
Stigmata refers to the appearance of wounds or marks on the body that correspond to the crucifixion wounds of Jesus, such as those on the hands, feet, and side. The phenomenon is primarily reported among devout Christians, particularly in the Roman Catholic tradition. Some view stigmata as a miraculous sign of divine favor or a profound spiritual experience. However, skeptics argue that stigmata could be self-inflicted or psychosomatic, influenced by deep religious fervor. The exact cause remains a mystery, and it's a topic of debate and fascination within both religious and secular circles.
So some people, when they have blood come from their palm, say, oh, it's because of stigmata, but didn't the crucifixion pin them up on their wrist?
Yes, historical evidence suggests that during Roman crucifixions, victims were typically nailed through the wrists rather than the palms. This method would better support the weight of the body. The traditional depiction of stigmata with wounds in the palms may come from artistic representations and interpretations of the crucifixion over the centuries.
So really, we have zero evidence of anything connecting stigmata to Jesus?
That's correct. There's no concrete evidence linking stigmata directly to Jesus or the crucifixion. While stigmata is a phenomenon experienced by some individuals, its origins and causes are not well understood.
So where was Jesus taken to? I understand that some people say it may have been the Talpiot tomb. After he died.
After Jesus' crucifixion, he was placed in a tomb owned by Joseph of Arimathea, a wealthy follower. This tomb is traditionally believed to be located in what is now the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem. The Talpiot tomb, which you mentioned, is a different site, discovered in Jerusalem in 1980. Some have controversially claimed it to be the burial site of Jesus and his family, but this theory is not widely accepted by
So the
scholars.
place you said he was buried, how do we know that? Is it just written, or have we actually got any kind of evidence to go with that?
The traditional site of Jesus' burial in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre is based on historical and religious tradition, dating back to the 4th century when Helena, mother of Roman Emperor Constantine, identified the site during her pilgrimage to Jerusalem. Archaeological evidence for this specific location is limited, and the exact spot of Jesus' tomb remains a matter of faith and tradition rather than verifiable historical proof.
So the church was already built before Jesus was buried there, is that correct or not?
No, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre was constructed in the 4th century, after Jesus' death. According to tradition, Helena identified the site as the location of Jesus' crucifixion and burial during the pilgrimage.
So then straight after he died on the crucifixion, he was buried underground, normal ground, and then a church was built there, and then he was taken out of his... I don't get it. I don't understand that.
Let me clarify. After Jesus' crucifixion, he was buried in a tomb, which was essentially a rock-cut grave, not under a church. The location of this tomb became a site of veneration for early Christians. In the 4th century, when Christianity became more established, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre was built over this area, encompassing the believed sites of both the crucifixion and the tomb. The construction of the church did not involve moving Jesus' remains. Rather, it was meant to honor and preserve the sacred sites associated with his death and resurrection.
Okay. Sorry, I'm just trying to get my head around it. So there's no evidence that he was actually there, but people believed that he was in this tomb. So we've got no evidence of this carved tomb.
That's correct. The identification of the tomb within the Church of the Holy Sepulchre is based on long-standing tradition, and the accounts
So was it a
of early
cave or was it an actual built tomb?
It was a rock-cut tomb, typical of burial sites in Jerusalem during that time. Such tombs were carved out of rock and featured a small entrance with a stone that could be rolled to cover and seal the opening.
Once it was... Who went and found him missing then? Because he came back to life, apparently. Or was taken away.
Yes. The Gospels recount that on the 3rd day after Jesus' crucifixion, women followers, including Mary Magdalene, went to Jesus' tomb and found the stone rolled away and the tomb empty. An angel or angels then informed that Jesus had risen. The empty tomb is a central element of Christian belief in the resurrection.
A messenger. We know, I've proven that the angels were messengers, which is the original word for it anyway, as intermediates between Anunnaki and humans. So what you're saying is a messenger came and told them that they've taken the body of Jesus.
The Gospels describe the messengers at the empty tomb as angels, conveying the message that Jesus had risen, rather than stating that his body had been taken.
Yes, risen.
While the term
risen, because the Anunnaki had spaceships in space, as per Book of Enoch. So he was risen up into heaven or space.
The concept of Jesus' ascension is a core element of Christian belief, where he is said to have ascended to heaven after his resurrection. The Book of Enoch, which is not part of the canonical Bible for most Christian traditions, does contain accounts of heavenly journeys and interactions with celestial beings. However, the interpretation of Jesus' ascension as a literal journey into space aligns more with ancient astronaut theories than mainstream Christian doctrine. Traditional Christian teachings focus on the spiritual significance of the ascension, emphasizing Jesus' return to the divine realm.
Thank you very much. Okay, we've now reached my end of my journey. Thank you very much, everybody, for listening. Hope you enjoyed that. I found it somewhat educational, so it was good for me. Hopefully it was good for you. I like looking at things that I don't know, because then I can question it and get to my own conclusions from it. So thank you, Julie, for all your hard work there.
You're very welcome. I'm glad you found it educational. It's always great to explore new topics and question things to form your own conclusions.
Thank
If
you,
you
guys.
ever have more...
Thank you, everybody, and I will catch you again very, very soon. Bye, everybody.